before we do that, Mr. Chairman, we need to take a little situation that I was made abreast of a couple of days ago about the incident where we were notified last Thursday that a person, for some reason, showed up on our campus with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't heard anything else other than some investigation. And I was wondering why was this investigated and why wasn't that person arrested?
So is this an item you'd like to add to the agenda, Mr. Potts?
No question.
Okay, so I guess we could add I guess we can make that D and move D down, is that correct? 'Cause we would have to make new business, correct?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how much I can say other than it is under investigate. I mean, it was handed over to law enforcement.
Well,
So.
when we get to it, we can talk about that because I don't
Okay.
understand why we're investigating.
So
It really bothers me that we let this kind of thing slide back.
okay, so we would need a motion, Mr. Potts, to add that to the agenda and then a second. Do you want to make that motion?
I wanted to add something similar to that, but I want mine to be in closed session.
Okay.
Because
Same issue or different?
yeah, because I think there's some sensitivity issues that dealing with it.
No problem with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so those items will be brought up under closed session. I'm assuming they would be under maybe the disciplining. Is that correct? Would that fall under discipline, or how do we?
It's really,
I think it's
it's
number
under a contract. I guess the whole incident falls under our it's under a contract that we have with a vendor.
Okay.
So I think the whole incident maybe falls under contracted service.
Okay, so it sounds like a contract matter that may be appropriate for closed session.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Potts, are you okay with us adding that under the closed session materials? Okay. So, at this point then, we would just need an approval of a motion to approve the agenda unless there are other amendments.
Just to make it a little more complicated,
Okay.
I'd like to add employee compensation, the incentives, to the discussion. In our meeting last week, we said we were going to discuss that tonight, so I just want to make sure we put it on there and close it.
Okay, so I'm going to add that.
Let me make it formal, I guess. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented with the addition of old business section for employee compensation.
It would appear appropriate to me to make that item D and then shift the other down. Does anyone have any objections to that?
On the close?
It would be D would now be old business,
Okay.
E would be closed meeting, F would be adjournment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to add an item under old business. We would need a second for that.
Sorry.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Potts. All in favor of approving the agenda with the addition, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Okay, so we have an agenda that's been approved. The first item on the agenda now is the payment of final bills with Dr. Bucklew.
So we've submitted a PDF list of all the bills that have been presented to be paid for the end of year. All of these are expected. Some of the higher values you will see are the security grant, which is a reimbursable. Just want to make that clear. And the textbooks is a direct pay from our direct aid that will be pushed over to the textbook account to cover the expenses that we've had for textbooks this year. So those are the main points I wanted to put out. Other than VACOR was another large, that's our annual renewal for all. It's not just workers' comp and liability, it's all insurance, inland marine. I also have a student accident in there, property. So that's our entire bundle. Do you have any questions?
Just one clarification, if I may.
Yes.
The
Michelle.
textbook, you said, is that actually the purchase of textbooks, or is that moving it to the textbook account?
That is to move it to the textbook account, and that's the number directly off of the direct aid calculator.
I move we approve the payment of final bills.
Do we have a second to Lacy's motion, Ms. Shotwell's motion, I'm sorry?
Yeah, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the bills. Is there any more discussion?
I have a question.
Okay, yes, sir, Mr. Potts.
Through the process, and I don't see anything about EPA. Is that on, are we going to pay this tonight, or are we going to pay this next week, or next month, or next year, or what?
We haven't actually gotten that final fine yet. I have a meeting, and Dr. Buckley and I, with our attorney, have a meeting with the EPA this, what is it, Wednesday? What's tomorrow, actually? Is it Wednesday?
I believe
Today?
it
It's
is.
Monday. It's Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Um,
yes.
Because once we were notified of all of that information, we turned it over to our attorney, and we're in negotiation for that. So until we find out if that fine, some of that's gonna get reduced, and once all of that is in negotiation, then we'll come back with as a final notice. And so then we
Is
will,
there gonna be an open meeting or closed meeting?
Depends on the outcome.
as far as I know, it's not a public meeting, it's just a conversation between their lawyers, our lawyer, and us.
So, can board members come?
I mean, if you would like to come, you could come.
What
I
time
mean,
Yes.
Wednesday is that?
I will have to look at my
I can
calendar.
look at your look at my calendar. I mean, it's just a phone conference.
Just a phone call?
Yeah, it's just a phone conference,
If I may,
yes.
might
Michelle.
want to caution if this is between lawyers,
Mhm.
I don't think the board members should be on that,
What?
because it's our lawyer and another lawyer discussing a fee, and I don't think we should get confused in there. Let the lawyers handle it. Now, I do think we need an update on that, and that should be discussed in the board, and that can be either closed session or open session, depending on the legality of that, but I don't think board members should sit in with the lawyers. That's my opinion. I don't know if we need to vote on that or not.
Well, it seems to me that we need to get some involvement, at least listen to what's being said, not necessarily mentioning anything that would come across one's mind to say at that time, knowing that it is a conversation between lawyers and the EPA and us. So, I would like to hear the EPA, do that, since there's no violation of the law for me to be there, or anybody to be there, as long as the board member. I don't see why one couldn't be there, that's for a reason. So,
Mr. Lloyd, could I say something?
Ms. Fraley, yes, ma'am.
I think it's rarely that Mrs. Shotwell and I agree on something, but here we go. I think that our attorney and the other attorney and the two of you need to be involved in this, and then you can report to us the findings. I mean, that's why we have an attorney to represent us.
So Mr. Potts, I know you brought that matter up. Are you comfortable with Dr. Huskin as our superintendent and the attorney bringing that information back to the board for our review?
what if we get back, we don't like it? Or I don't like it, maybe,
Well-
unless you don't like it, what we gonna do then? Have we call another meeting?
Well, my presumption would be we wouldn't pay any bill that we were not comfortable with or didn't have a good understanding of it, so that may require a secondary conversation at that point.
Because I have some, maybe they can't answer at that particular meeting, but maybe it might be answered when your conversation is finished with them and you bring it back to us, then we may need to go in closed session to discuss this, because I have several problems with,
Okay.
what's going on with that EPA and why we got charged, who knew about it, who
Okay.
didn't tell anybody about it, and what it needs to be brought out so the public could be really aware of
And
what's going on.
Point of
And
order.
not to cut you off, but I do think part of that could fall under a closed session item if we're talking about personnel or, again, legal matters that, pending litigation or anything of that nature. It would really need to be under a closed session. So why don't we do this? Why don't we ask Dr. Huskin to please plan to update us at the July meeting in closed session?
Absolutely.
since it is a legal matter and personal. Yes, sir.
You got a point of order.
Okay. Ms. Shotwell?
I was just gonna ask that we stick to the agenda, because that is not on the agenda, so, ask that we have a motion, I believe, on the floor, plus a second, if we
Okay.
can move forward with that.
Okay, is there any more discussion
Yes.
on the payment of bills?
Let me make a correction here. It may not be on the agenda, but is an item that we're supposed to be looking at to be paid.
Okay,
So it still falls under
okay,
the offices of taking care of business.
okay,
So, saying that's not an item on here is not gonna get away from the fact that that is an item of business that needs to be taken care of, since we haven't discussed it.
okay.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
All right, and I know we'll count on Dr. Huskin to make sure she updates us
Thank you.
under closed session at the next meeting. Any more discussion on the payment of bills? Any concerns or questions for Dr. Buckley? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve the agenda that's been properly seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Okay, thank you, Dr. Buckley. So the next item is the addition added by Ms. Shotwell. Ms. Shotwell, you have the floor.
Yeah, in our meeting last week, Dr. Buckley took us through all kinds of stuff related to the compensation, and we postponed voting on that until the full board was here and we were in a regular meeting. I think we still need to have the salary scales in front of us before we proceed with that, so that, I know we said we were gonna vote on it tonight. I think we need to do that in July instead, so it's just a comment that we will look at that as a board in July.
Okay, so I know you mentioned the salary scales, bringing it up in July. Was there any other part of the presentation that you wanted to reference tonight?
Yeah, there were some questions about the retention plan. I know some, Dr. Huskin brought up a new plan potentially that could help with retention bonuses, and we don't plan on voting on that just yet. I think
Just,
someone
if
else
you'd
might
like a
have-
little clarity on that, just one of the ideas or options that has been discussed, that we did discuss in our work session, was the potential that we are working on is the Stay with Halifax, Grow with Halifax longevity plan. And there are some components to that we want to continue to grow a little bit deeper and grow a little bit more, just to encourage some more facets of bigger than a traditional step model, but just to encourage people. It has some more components on it. We need to project it out. I know Dr. Buckley wants to look at what it would be, and you all had some questions about not just what it would be for 1 year, but what's it going to, what's the investment? Again, we want to invest in our people long term. So again, when you hear longevity, so it's more than something that we could put together in just a few weeks. So we need time, and to do things well and to stand something up well, we need time to bring it back before you. Yes.
Thank you for that. I also was wondering about teacher performance evaluations. Is there any example we can look at about performance evaluations, like raises, like a one-time bonus or raise based on their performance as a teacher, like in the private sector, annual performance reviews and raises based on how you do your job?
Like merit pay, that's a conversation that goes back and forth, and those are philosophical conversations just because of the subjective nature of those. We can have conversations about that, but those conversations, you get into those like you do when you open the nest about grading, grading philosophy. Those are philosophical conversations. We can talk about it, but you get in the weeds of it's the opinion of different. Anyway, we can certainly have those conversations, but maybe you have to have at least an acceptable one to get it. Again, I'll bring anything before you for conversation. We can add that component. We can talk about it, but that gets a little dicey when you talk about a longevity plan.
And I do understand the presentation the other day, and it was my interpretation that really the concept is somewhat in its infancy right now. And
It
it's
is.
something that we're hoping to add, or add to and look at further.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any more discussion on,
Somewhat confused on this. Do we or don't we evaluate our teachers every year?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so isn't that what you was asking?
She wanted to do an additional compensation for if they, depending on where they are on their evaluation. And that's very challenging to do because we could get into some legal,
Oh, okay.
we could get into some legal trouble with that.
You're attaching money to what you're talking about.
Yes, she's trying to attach some merit pay to that because, and again, some different, there's been, again, we've been in this career long enough to have seen that kind of cycle through, and you can get into some legal ramifications of, well, this principal didn't like me, so they evaluated me poorly, and this one liked me, so they did it well. Again, you just have to be very careful in how you do merit pay evaluations.
Is that why we came up with step raises rather than doing merit?
No, we've never done, the state of Virginia, I don't know of anywhere in Virginia that does merit pay.
Oh,
There's just different states that do it. I don't know of anywhere in our state that does merit pay.
so it's basically a step to begin with that.
It just depends on,
Or a
we're
step.
looking at the regular step plus the separate grow with us a longevity, where you get a separate bump at years 5, 10, 15,
Right.
and then the other things that we have. Yeah, the options, yeah. So,
yeah, I know we would like to encourage Dr. Huskin to potentially look into this further. Is there any motion on the floor related to this item?
I can make a motion.
Okay. Ms. Fraley?
I make a motion to authorize Dr. Huskin and her staff to build the details for the Stay with Halifax, Grow with Halifax longevity plan and report back to the board no later than our October meeting.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor authorizing or directing Dr. Huskin to pursue this longevity plan with a formal report to the board at the October meeting. Do we have a second?
Twice in the same night, I'll second that.
We're ending the year right and starting the new year right. We have full agreement here. So we have a motion on the floor that's been properly seconded by Ms. Shotwell to have Dr. Huskin provide a formal report to the full board on the longevity plan at the October meeting. Is there any more discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none.
I'm still bothered. That I understand what you're talking about. Are we gonna look at a step raise for next year? Yes or no?
Yes, that item was, it's on the July meeting.
July?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, so all we gotta do now is come up with some figures and come up with some money to pay.
Yes, that's part of the salary scale discussion, and I guess getting further information from the governors, the way I understand that, Mr. Potts. There's a few things still up in the air. We're waiting to,
That's a 2% for one time, right?
yes, sir.
Okay. So what if that 2% don't come? Do I need to wait for that market rate in July?
I would say that we probably wait to July just so we'll have all the information in front of us, and maybe Dr. Buckley will be better prepared to update the board.
we're waiting.
Okay.
If they ever go back to Richmond and give us a budget,
Okay.
we'll have some, that's what we're waiting on.
Okay. We'll keep our fingers crossed and hope to cross that one in July. Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor that's been properly seconded. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay, motion passed. So we'll just ask Dr. Huskin to please be prepared in October to present that to the full board.
Thank you all. I'm excited. We're excited about that.
And we appreciate your work on this so far. Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've concluded all the items that are on the open part of the agenda, so we would need a motion to go into closed session if there are items to be discussed.
Just one question before we do that. The closed session item that's being added, is that related to contracts or is that related to school security?
Well, that school security is a contract, so it's kind of the same.
Are we signing, we don't have to sign or
No.
modify?
No.
So
But it's an
school
issue
security is
concerning
more-
that contract.
Okay.
So pursuant to section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the board convene a closed meeting for the purpose of considering the following specific matters. Personnel, the appointment, resignation, and salaries of specific division employees as authorized by section 2.2-3711.1 of the Code of Virginia. And school security, discussion of plans related to the security of any governmental facility, building, or structure, or the safety of persons using such facility, building, or structure as authorized by section 2.2-3711.19 of the Code of Virginia.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Shotwell to go into closed session to discuss the items specifically mentioned. Do we have a second?
You have a second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, now in closed session.